just go live on YouTube. Bro, this is literally what's on right now.
But there's a delay.
Now it's there. No audio. There it is.
There's the audio for them. No audio on YouTube.
Dude, you're like 30 minutes. Alright. Tripod, snowball. You shit. And the section up to the ground.
There's no audio. Ernie,
Audio for who?
this is for us.
For us. What do you mean? No audio coming out?
guided my character. I never made any of those decisions. I just showed up every day, and then suddenly they're like, "Oh, you're Richard's assistant. You're now the general on the base." And I think at that point, probably I became more like radar than that before. So, Joe, what do you say?
Well, I mean, your character predated my time. I joined in season 4, and by that point, your character's been around for a while. And it's something I was talking about the other day that writers will create the character, but then the actor will bring that character to life, and depending on what they bring, you form that kind of symbiotic relationship, right? So I'm sure you were initially just Chevron guy initially, and then they started to throw you a few lines, and it's what you did with those lines that really inspired the writers to write more dialogue, to give you a name, Norman, and then basically change the name to Walter, and and really make you a part of that gate room, as important as the gate itself, perhaps.
It's interesting that radar was brought up because with MASH, Richard Dean Anderson, Gary and I have talked about this a lot, is the one who changed his name. Because I don't think in 2010, Walter is mentioned in the script.
No.
Is that right? Yeah, and then someone says, Rick, that's not his name. It is now.
But his name tag was, I think, Norman, wasn't it?
It said Norman Davis.
Yeah. And Rick looked at me and said, and I said, Colonel, and he goes, Walter? And I was like, yeah, sure, it's in the future, whatever. It's a future of changed names.
We have a question from Lori S. I'm going to say when Stargate comes back, do you see yourself with a role in that? How would you hope to see your role progress from your previous role? I will say, at San Diego, we discussed how Dr. Ware returns, so I'm pretty sure it's feasible.
Anything's feasible. Soap operas and sci-fi, anything can happen.
So when it comes back, do you see yourself returning?
Are you kidding? It'd be fabulous. It'd be fabulous to revisit that world, those characters, and those people, the actors, the writers. Yeah, it'd be fabulous. It's an extraordinary experience that's, it keeps rippling along. So, and I miss her. I really liked her. I liked her as a earthling, as a human being, and I liked spending time in her skin. I liked, and she knows that you get asked questions all the time about, how do you like or how do you not like characters that you play. And with her, I always thought, gosh, there's a lot of things I'm akin, but to have that intelligence and that discipline in life would be extraordinary. So I looked at her a lot for that and go, yeah, I don't have either of those. God, I wish someone that would have wrapped up. Yeah.
There's a lot of room with that character. Like Joe played with in terms of the script for Stargate Extinction, I believe. For human form, we never knew what happened. So they could do anything with that.
That's a nice thing about sci-fi is no one ever really is 100% dead. So you never know. And I mean, when we were at San Diego Comic-Con last year, we all read that the scene where basically, in my mind, Elizabeth Weir wasn't Stacy. She was somewhere out there. So there's always the opportunity to bring her back.
Well, Rick brought that up, especially amazingly in Enemies. It's 502, where after they just watched Apophis incinerate in an atmosphere, and they're trying to convince Teal'c that Apophis is not a god. Rick is like, I'm 100% certain, 99% certain that Apophis is dead. So anything can happen.
The 1% that the entire genre rests on.
Gary, do you see yourself returning?
Well, it'd be a dream to go back and work in that world, but I would love it if they had to talk me out of retirement. That would be really cool. You know what I mean? It's like, please come back, Walter. You're the only guy. The only guy. And I would be kind of like, then I would spend the rest of my time on the show with a slight air of resentment, which I think which I think would play well on television, you know. And I would beard. I'm not losing the beard. That's like a deal breaker.
Is that the last scene of the pilot, where basically suddenly you come in and
Yeah. I come in last scene of the pilot, and yeah, I was like, okay, well, and you know what? I still have my flight suit, and I fit into it. Can you believe it? I don't know how many years it's been, but I fit into that flight suit. It's insane.
Did you try it on?
I did. Well, I wore it to bed, of course.
How often do you check out if you fit?
Not very often. Not very often, like once every 3 weeks.
All right, that's reasonable, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of the future, from Summer in the chat, Joe, what do you want the future of the furlings to be?
The furlings. You know, I've never been a big fan of the furlings, even though we've never seen the furlings. Rob Cooper call them the furlings for some reason, this unseen race. And then after he called them the furlings, his alien naming privileges were revoked. And after that, he could never, seriously, he's never named an alien race again. Because when I think of the furlings, I always imagine like kind of like Care Bears of outer space. And you know, that's what comes to mind.
They
So
sound like neighbors. They sound like the family of the furlings live next door.
Was it a far gone conclusion that you were going to design them like giant koalas for the?
No, it just. I would always make fun of the fact that I would imagine them as Care Bears. And so when we did, I think it was 200, the episode 200, where it was just kind of a crazy episode where everything went. Rob Cooper wrote that scene where we actually meet the furlings, and they turned out to be essentially Ewoks.
Who doesn't love Ewoks, right?
I really hate the Ewoks. They're the reason why I stopped watching the Star Wars movies halfway through Return of the Jedi. But
Well,
I'll get into that.
I think as soon as I saw them dancing at the end of that episode, at the end of that film, I was like, okay, I'm done. They were dancing.
Yep, no.
They were dancing and like sort of drinking beer around a campfire. Can't do this.
You don't think cute furry things in real life, Joe?
Yes. You're referring to my dog, right? Yeah. Sushi is actually in bed already. She's asleep.
I know it's
8:30. Yeah. That's her bedtime.
Okay, I think we can talk. Is it still good? Can you still hear it?
That would probably be a question for Rob Cooper or Brad Wright.
Before we continue, I know we have to say goodbye to Gary.
Oh, no,
Oh.
I'll just be here for a couple more minutes.
Okay. Well, if we lose you, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. But just further to what Joe was saying, I know Joe, like you guys would get the scripts vetted, but when I would go on conventions and that's almost like being in the trenches because you're actually meeting fans face to face. And I have to say that I lost count of the number of times where military people and ex-military people would come up to me and they would just praise the show to the heavens because of how true it was. So however much vetting, I didn't really see that. Of course, I was not privy to that, but fans would talk to me, military fans. And I remember one time there was a woman who said that her husband was ex-military. They would watch military films and shows, and he would just call bullshit on so many shows going, that would never happen. That would never happen. They're just making that up. And they watched Stargate and she said and it drove her crazy. She couldn't watch a show with him because he kept calling the show out on the protocol or lack thereof. And she said Stargate he loved because they got everything right. So I don't know if I've ever told you that, Joe, but
I never have.
But that is I came across that all the time.
Harry, weren't
like
the types of fans you would ask, like, what kind of dental policy would I have had? You know,
well,
you did
that,
it.
That
so
was when I would get specific people coming up to me, guys coming up to me and saying I was a chief master sergeant and I'm retired now. So as soon as I was like face to face with the chief master sergeant, I would say, okay, what kind of dental plan did I have? How many holidays did I get? What was, like, did I get a parking space? Like, I would ask them all this stuff about their job, that if I had the job, what kind of perks would I get? And I just had the greatest conversation. They were fantastic guys. They all are. The fans are just brilliant. But I would have like the best conversations with these guys who were like ex-military, and they loved it. They loved telling me that, of what they would, that kind of stuff, like, medical, dental, all that kind of stuff. It was fun. That's the kind of stuff that I find interesting, because I'm just playing a part, and you guys kept upping my rank every bloody 2 seasons. I'd come back and they'd be like, "Oh, by the way, you're promoted." I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, you just are. Don't worry about it. Just shut up and say your lines with all these medals." And so, yeah, but that's just a testament to the vetting that the military gave the show, and none of the military people could find fault with it. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. We have a question, I think, from Gary, asking about your favorite moment from each show. Is this not your question?
From me?
Nope, it's from someone named Gary.
No, I tend to ask my own questions, so I'm surprised in this one.
What is your favorite moment from each?
No,
from the series, any show. It doesn't have to be with your character.
That's too many. I would say firing a machine gun, and again, I say this all the time. Heroes Part 1 and 2, where you guys mocked my position. Joe and Paul just made fun of me. The fact that I just opened the gate, closed the gate, and it's like Saul Rubinik's like, and what else? And I'm like, nah, that's pretty much it. I love that. That's a great moment for me.
Robert Cooper joined.
Was it Robert Cooper?
It was.
Oh my God.
Written, directed by.
Yeah.
Oh
no, that was Andy Makita. Andy
Makita. Sorry. Yeah.
Andy Makita directed it, and it was just so much fun. I was like, okay, I'm called out. I got nothing to offer the show other than palm on, palm off.
Tori, do you have a favorite moment?
Oh gosh, a bunch of them. I mean, as an audience member, I sort of always loved when in both SG1 and SGA, I was not a part of any of these journeys, but I loved it when they showed up on Earth. I just like that sort of crash, those worlds colliding. But for myself, I liked it when she got to wear black.
Wear black.
I liked it when they got rid of all the scenes where she wasn't wearing a red shirt were probably my favorite.
I was at a con, was it last year, and I ran into a woman who was cosplaying weird. She had the red.
A lot of them,
Red top.
amazing, and they all the red shirt, and they get the right.
She had the hair.
Wow, crazy.
Did she happen to have
I
a little white
love
dog
she
with
got
her?
to have a gun. That was fun when she got to be a bit sort of more. I got to run around as a personal, like that was a fun thing to play.
Yes.
Tell us how Sedge got involved with the show.
Oh, because there's all the best writers and producers in the world that were all dog lovers. I don't know why you guys chose to write her in. Why did you? How did that come about? It just sort of happened. I don't remember because everybody had dogs. Why did Sedge make
Sedge is the only one that made it on, except for Rick's dog, I think.
Yeah, there were a lot of dog lovers on the production. A lot of dogs also.
Oh, it was so great. The hair and makeup trailers some mornings, it'd be like 6 dogs running around. It was fabulous. It was so just, you couldn't get stressed between scenes. You'd run out and play with the dogs. And yeah, it was that was really unique. It's weird because I sort of have expectation now and I go, oh no, that was just because you guys are special and created this. Because you all brought your dogs into the office, right?
We did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was the most. So I don't know, how did Sedgwick get into it, Joe? Who decided to?
It was not my episode, but I just would have imagined they knew how much you loved your dog. And, seeing people interact with animals, I think also like humor is kind of a shorthand. You just automatically like them, right? It just kind of warms up the character. Adds a little depth, if you will.
Although she left the dog to go to outer space, so kind of cold.
But she left.
She dumped the dog in the dude.
There was a petition for a while to get Sedge to Atlantis, and it's one of those things where if we're this absolutely real, we would have been like, you want me to come back, take back to the Pegasus Galaxy, I'm bringing the dog.
That would have been fabulous. I was trying to push for that. The dog running man. What? Where is he? Stuck in the well? What? It's been done, I know.
We have another question from the chat. Linda asks, what's everyone drinking tonight?
Beer.
All right.
Same. Grapefruit beer.
Japanese whiskey.
Japanese whiskey is so good.
It is.
Oh my God, I love Japanese. I got given some for my birthday. And,
do you remember the bottle?
God, no. It's like it was a really cool bottle. It was about like that big. Oh God, what was it called?
Was it square?
No, it was round. It was totally round, and just a little sort of like spout on it. But it was just kind of it was beautiful. I think it was. It was just a beautiful bottle, Yeah. But the Japanese whiskey I love. Very good.
When's your birthday?
January the 4th.
Just missed it.
Just missed it by 5 months, Joe.
Do you all? Does anyone remember their first day on set?
I do, and I almost lost the job.
Chief.
Yeah, because Mario's
a party.
Mario is a party. They told me to sit in the control room, and wait. And at first, for the first 20 minutes, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool! This is so cool!" And I was like, "When are they getting to me?" It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to be a while, but just stay here." And I was just exhausted. And then by the time they got to me, I think it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. I'd had lunch, and then I went back in this dark room, and I'm just sitting there by myself. Can you imagine? In the control room, staring at the Stargate for like 6 hours. And then finally, when Mario comes into the, shooting the pilot, and he comes into the room, he's got all these people running around, and I'm like, oh my God, I am so tired. But at least I was happy that they were in the room. They were going to shoot pretty soon. And I closed my eyes because I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes. I know where they are. They can't see me. And my eyes felt like they had sand in them. And I closed my eyes. My eyes must have been closed for like maybe 5 seconds after sitting there for like 6 hours. And there's a ping, and Mario has thrown like a penny or a nickel at the window because Mario saw me with my eyes closed. Basically, I was like, quote unquote, sleeping on set. And he was just pissed off. And then he sort of kind of went like this, like, hey, that's a no-no. And I was like, and I was so full of adrenaline at that point, like I couldn't close my eyes. My eyes were cranked open, like I'd had like 17 coffees. And I was like, okay, I'm awake. And then we got through the day, and I thought, okay, that can't ever happen again. The next day I went into work, it happened again. I did it again. And Mario saw me again. And this time he just went like this. He licked his finger, and I like 2 strikes. And I was like, I'm gonna get fired. And so I was just freaked out about, because I was just sitting in a room by myself forever. And, because there was a sense that they were trying to work things out and take, what it's like, Joe, is like they're trying to like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to shoot this? Yeah. There's all extras. It's a giant episode, a 2-parter. So I could kind of understand all that. But I would say, oh, can I just go? If you don't need me, can I just go in my room, my trailer, and just? They're like, no, just don't leave. You just they're going to be here soon, and they just never showed up. And so that was my first kind of 2 days on the job, not falling asleep, but closing my eyes enough to look like I was falling asleep and pissing off the director and almost getting fired.
Tori, do you remember your first day?
Yeah, well, it was so huge. I mean, because we came up for like a week before. It all happened so quickly, getting the job and driving up to Vancouver and all of a sudden. But I'll never forget walking onto that set, seeing that set. I was blown away. It was a very awe moment. I think we all of the actors, we felt very humbled and terrified and and excited. I'm really excited. Yeah.
You started off doing 4 hours of television simultaneously, 2-parters.
Oh, because I was shooting. Yeah, that was really fun. I talk about that at most conventions. It was really fun because I was shooting the pilot for Atlantis, and then I was also shooting an episode for SG1 at the same time. So I was going back and forth from these 2 different sets, and one was just these newbies, all of us, terrified that they were already regretting their casting choices, waiting to be fired, trying to, like all that sort of neurosis of a new job. And then the other set, everyone's, farting and showing up drunk and completely relaxed and comfortable. Yeah. It was these 2 complete parallel universes. It was
but it's true though, Tori, right? Like I just said, I was worried about getting fired. And you're like, every actor, you show up, you're like, what is this world?
To this day.
Am I going to get fired? Is it possible that I might be fired?
Even season 3 on a show, still, for sure.
Tori, did the fan expectation, were you aware of that peripherally at all when you were shooting the pilot? Was it something that was foremost on your mind? Where did that fit?
I wasn't really aware of it because it was a whole new, I mean, obviously knew SG1, but I wasn't a part of the, fandom myself. So it was a whole different world to me. I remember we all watched Galaxy Quest that first week, and I was like, oh, this is sort of funny and interesting. And then we were all at San Diego Comic-Con I think it was before the show had even aired. Is that right? Do you remember that, Joe, that first Comic-Con? And I thought it was going to be nobody there because I thought, well, they already hate us because they're worried we're going to get rid of SG1. So there's going to be nobody showing up. And also the show's not even really aired yet. I don't think it had aired yet. And then we opened the doors and there was like this, it felt like a football field full of people who were extraordinarily warm and supportive. Not online. I discovered that. Don't go online.
No,
don't go to chat rooms. Don't read comments. Don't ever do that. Learned that quickly. But in person, everyone's lovely and very supportive.
Tori, you say that, you and Gary both said that you're always worried about getting fired. Did you feel that way also on Dark Matter when you came in?
Ooh.
Were you scared that Joe, who had brought you specifically in?
Well, the character was only supposed to be in for one or.
Well, originally, you were supposed to be in 2 episodes and die in the 2nd episode. And I remember you calling me and saying, I've kind of committed to this convention. I think we're going out to Australia, and I've already, busy. You already made plans, but you were like, but I can find a way. Maybe I can cancel. And I was like, you know what? Don't cancel. Just do 1 episode, and I promise to bring you back the next season. So you bank 1 episode, I think, that first season, but averted death of your character, and then came back and became kind of a recurring character. And I love the way you played your Truffaut. It was kind of a cross between Weir and Mae West. A lot of swagger, which I really love.
That's funny. She's fun to play. I like all the women that you've had meet. Yeah, you write good women. They're always very strong and they're fun and Weir didn't have so many fun moments, but she too worried about the world.
And you also got to do like the 2-gun thing, I think in Dark Matter, one episode, you got to do a bit of a shoot 'em up.
That's right. That was super fun. And that collar, I still miss that outfit, man. Fabulous.
Speaking of guns and stunts, Tori, I know you got to do some on Atlantis, not so much because she stayed in and told everyone else what to do. But did you have a stunt that you wanted to try but you haven't gotten to yet?
Oh, 2 things I'd love to do, which I'm too chicken to do in my life, but I would do if I had to. Shave my head, which is not a stunt, but I'd love a show to say you got to shave your head. Because I'm not brave enough to do it. The other is, I would like to do some more stunts. I'd like to jump out of a plane. I'd do that kind of stuff. That'd be fun. It'd be fun to do it with a show because then they've got the insurance and the training. I don't have to go and just like hire somebody in a field behind a fair or something and hope that they pack the parachute correctly.
Gary, would you jump out of a plane?
Yeah, I've bungee jumped a bunch of times, so yeah, I'd jump out of a plane. Yeah.
We have another chat question from Gail. Speaking of acting in the process, do you guys have any good mentors or guides for acting?
Oh, what a good question.
No.
What a good question. I think it's so good to search for mentors. I didn't even understand the idea of mentorship when I was younger. I only started understanding it really the last decade. And I really wish I'd understood it when I was younger, because I think it's no matter what you choose to do, it's so beautiful to have somebody that's not your family, that's not, financially a boss, or, to have somebody just help and offer experience and guidance and wisdom. I think it's beautiful. For myself, for acting, I mean, it was just watching people and looking at people and going to theater and people in the community, but I didn't have a personal person that I went to. And I don't have many regrets in life, but that's fun. I think it helps really give you a focus. So good for you, whoever's asking that question. I hope you have a fabulous one.
That was Gail. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you all for being here to talk about Stargate and a little bit of Dark Matter. If you have any cameos or websites or merch that you want to plug before we sign off. Nope. Okay.
Well, I did a show, which is, I think, still on air right now, Transplant. It's a little hospital show, nothing sci-fi about it, but it's still on air right now. And it's really sort of a nice, timely show, talking about all kinds. It makes me very proud to be Canadian. It's really showing the Canadian multicultural community in a way. And also the healthcare, living in America, it's showing the beautiful Canadian healthcare system.
You know where it's airing?
But check it out, CTV Transplant.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And I created a show. I created a web series that's going to be going up on YouTube. It's called Forgotten Masters. And I play an old British musicologist who interviews guitar players who are never kind of made it into the spotlight. And we've already had 3. It's a character that has like a co-op radio show, 3 o'clock in the morning till 3:20, that kind of thing. And it's called Forgotten Masters. It's sort of celebrating the unstrung heroes of the guitar. The guitar players are all, they're different genres, funk, blues, German hard rock. And every time I interview a guitar player, they're all played by the same guy.
Where is it? Where do we?
It will go up on YouTube. We're just putting the finishing touches on it now. But we did 3 interviews, and they're about 20 minutes long, and he plays guitar in each one. But the catch is that they're all played by Ken Lawson, who is he's a fantastic improviser and a great guitar player. And you put a wig on him and put a different costume on him, and then we have different interviews, like with these obscure guitarists who are really good. They're the Forgotten Masters. So that was a show that I dreamed up to do with Ken, And so watch. I'll let everybody know when it's on YouTube. But we've already done 3, and we're going to do more. So anyway,
Whoa.
yeah, it's pretty
Awesome.
cool. It was pretty fun.
Thank you all again. Thank you to
Thank you
David.
so much, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you. Lovely to see everybody. Oh my
Thanks,
God.
You guys.
You
Yeah, brilliant. Bye.
Bye. Hi, guys. Hey, guys.
when it's really a big 11 by 17 poster.
It's an illusion. My life is full of lies now. I don't know what to believe.
Yeah. Well, with everybody putting up their backgrounds as, look, I'm at the Avengers, headquarters. Look at me. I'm in the TARDIS. Look at me. I'm on the moon.
No one's on the moon.
All right. Cool.
Oh, really? That's not what all these people are saying on the internet.
What are you drinking there, Brian?
I'm drinking a Chicago-based beer. Fat Tire.
Oh, Fat Tire. I love Fat Tire. That's great.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite beers aside from that one?
I do a lot of craft beering, so I kind of move around region to region. But if I'm gonna do like your typical big bottler kind of beer, I'll go for a Heineken or an Amstel, or sometimes I'll get on a kick of lights and I'll do like Coronas and ciders.
I've just been informed that we are live on the interwebs. So
Yay!
All right, cool. So can we continue this beer discussion?
Yes, we are open panel, Clerks panel. We've got Brian and Marilyn here from the movie. We're gonna cover it all. We're gonna go back to '94, but first I want to introduce my partner in crime, Detective Artemis.
Hi everyone, I am Detective Artemis, as stated, and yes, for the record, I am a real detective, not really.
Excellent.
Now, am I the only one that can't hear him?
Yeah.
I can hear him echoing through your mic, Artemis, but I can't hear him from his own mic.
Right.
Let me see.
It looks like it's that way. Well, it's been a whole day of these kind of difficulties, so I apologize. As soon as you hit the live button, that's when everything takes a crack. We tested all the and it's all great. And as soon as we're live, it's happen. So I'm going to be the less distracting for you and let Detective Artemis take it from here.
All right, well, I guess you guys are stuck with me. Ha ha ha, joke's on you. Well, let's get started here. Clerks, it's been about, 25 years now?
26.
26. I can't detect good math either.
Yeah.
Well, 26 since it appeared in the theaters, and so I guess 27 since we shot. So
awesome.
Yeah,
well, yeah,
it's been definitely it's been a blink in the eye when you really think about it.
Yeah.
And time flies. It's one of my favorite movies. You guys and Kevin are one of my inspirations. Such a group of kids, like trying to do a self-financed movie with just, with very little, and it became such a cult thing to me, at least, and it's one of my favorites. So you guys are an inspiration.
Is this a little bit better now? Can you guys?
There you go.
Me?
Yeah, you're all good.
Hey, cool.
All right.
My back was hurting. hurting.
All right. So we're going to talk about a few things here. I want to get into Clerks 3. I don't know how much you guys can talk about that. But in the meantime, you guys have been keeping busy with some podcasting and a lot of cool things outside of the Hollywood circles here.
Well, we don't really know much about Clerks 3, only what has already been put out there by Kevin himself as to what the storyline is. And yes, podcasts galore, requests everywhere. I mean,
just hounding you for the Clerks information.
Yeah, it's pretty much everybody here is jacked into the Matrix, and we're all just sleeping in our own vat-filled pods, generating enough fat material for eventually the robot warlords to take over and power their machines with the fat are now putting on by staying in our self-isolation. As far as Clerks 3, I hear a lot of it from ain't it cool news and stuff like that. I don't get it directly from anybody but the internet these days.
So you find out when we find out then.
I thought you guys were
much.
connected. I thought you were going to get some inside gossip, so you're not that connected.
Well, the thing is, it's like he's actually in the process of writing it, so there really isn't much to tell.
Yeah.
The only thing that he put out, and when he was asked about it, when he said it was going to happen, is that he's Randall has a life moment and is thinking about the fact that they haven't really done anything with their lives, and so they're making a Clerks movie. That's what he's put out there. I mean, I've shared that information myself because I get Google alerts. This way you stay abreast to what's actually happening.
So we're going to learn together. We're going to figure it all out together. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I know.
And Brian,
So
you've been podcasting quite a bit.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that, how that's going?
Sure. So I've been asked to be part of, like we were saying before, by a ton of people to be on their podcasts, and I've been recording some podcasts over the few years I've been on the road. I've named mine called the Ohala Rant, and you can find that on YouTube and Facebook right now. You can go to the Facebook page and also follow along on Twitter and
I'm
Instagram.
subscribing right now.
Yeah. And so I've had 2 shows so far. The first guest of my first show was Marilyn Gigliotti. So I might have been her 37th, but she was my first when it came
37?
to 37. So I have actual podcast records, so actual episodes recorded just audio, like a regular podcast, that I'll eventually release and call them like classic cuts or something, and bring some of the guests that I had on those podcasts back on to see what has been updated since that last recording. But as far as this, it's been, I've been collecting equipment and different things over the years when it was on sale, kind of thing. And now I thought, well, if there's an entire globe sequestered to their homes, if I can't get it up and running now with literally a captive audience, then I don't know when I would get it done. So that's why I launched it.
Brian right away went into one of the most infamous lines for you, Marilyn. He brought up 36 dicks. What's it like?
37. Get that right.
What's that like 26 years later, and that's still the line, the go-to line?
And it will be till the day I die. Now, hopefully I don't die tomorrow, but I'm sure it will go on in infamy.
Yeah, every time I see that number, it's just like, oh, automatically, I think of 37 dicks.
Well, listen, I mean, this catchphrase is going to be on my tombstone. I'm sure of it.
Lucky you.
I'm not even supposed to be here. I mean, it'll be a good laugh for people who visit my grave.
And also,
like,
what smells like shoe polish here?
Exactly.
I think the funnier thing would be if, when I finally pass on to the pearly gates and all that kind of stuff, it'd be funny if the year ended in a 37.
Watch out, Mayans.
You have
we have a new calendar.
You have 17 years to go, honey.
Hopefully more than that. Yeah. But yeah.
Awesome.
Marilyn, what projects do you have? I'm sorry, Art, I didn't mean to step on you. What projects do you have going these days?
I'm just happy to be here. Okay, so I was just going to ask, like, this is a dumb nerd question, which I assume you've heard all the time, but it was pretty much your guys' first movie, and Kevin Smith, he writes this like really articulate dialogue. So I'm like watching, I'm like, it would take me forever to memorize these lines because I'm kind of dumb. So was it difficult for you guys to sort of to like memorize it? Did it take a lot of takes, or you just nailed it instantly?
Marilyn?
Yeah, it was a total fear for me. It really was. And still is to this day. It's like, cause I feel like I have less brain cells nowadays too. But yeah, no, it took quite a bit. And considering that I have a good chunk there at the very end of dialogue, I think there were about 4 takes for that. And we kind of almost had to split it up at one point.
Okay.
Do like the first half and then the second half, but I don't honestly recall though how many times I did all the scenes that I did do. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, it was
I mean,
great.
I don't, I as well as Marilyn, we came from a live theater background, so
awesome.
Having to memorize an entire script and actually perform an entire script in one seating, so to speak, was nothing new.
Right.
Kevin is very verbose, yes, with his dialogue, and he's very specific on how he likes it and in the way he wants it said, including tone.
Right.
And this was his first film, so he had a lot riding on this. He had, a lot of money that he had racked up on credit cards, and his comic books were being put into hawk, so to speak. And so him asking us to make sure that the dialogue was how it was written was, yes, completely understandable. And his pace of writing is very verbose and very, a mouthful for just normal kind of dialogue, especially between just a couple of guys in the store.
Right.
Like the first thing that I filmed was me and Lisa Spoonhour. We filmed the scene where Dante brings Caitlin into the video store to confront her about, I hear you're getting married. Yeah. And that's the second thing of the entire film that we ever shot. The first scene was with Marilyn and Jeff Anderson when they're in the store, when Randall's like, hey man, I think, he's just, he didn't want to tell you he wanted to break up with you, that whole conversation.
Yeah, he breaks up with, yeah.
Right. So the scene that I did with Lisa, it's 7 minutes uncut. There's no cutaways, there's no breaks, one take. From that point on, I think he had faith in me that I could get it done.
Oh, awesome. That's good.
I mean, the thing about theater too, though, it's like we have quite a few rehearsals before the actual performance. And
Right.
so you have all that time to get those lines down. So even though, yes, even for me, on theater, all those lines to memorize was still scary. Even more so though when you're on film. And thank God that Kevin does do rehearsals, because most out here for film, they don't do rehearsals.
No rehearsals?
Not really. Your blocking is your rehearsal. So
Was it kind of weird that this breakout film, this micro budget phenomena, comes out and you guys are the stars of the film, but Kevin's getting all the attention? Were you guys kind of like bummed out a little bit that you didn't get more of the attention and spotlight afterwards?
I mean, the way that I looked at it is like, well, it's his film. It's like he wrote it, he directed it. It's like he's in it and all that kind of stuff. But the issue that I will say is for me, I had no clue about PR, public relations, and all, the people that deal with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think had we known about that, that's something that definitely would have been to our advantage, and then there probably would have been a little bit more. But again, hindsight, and that there's no saying that would have been or made a difference.
Right.
And now, when the film came out in '94, I mean, we went to this independent feature film market, which is a small film festival in New York City where it first got screened. And it was a Sunday at 11 a.m. Nobody was in the audience. There was pretty much 20, 25 people in the audience, 12 of which were us. And so thankfully, a gentleman by the name of Bob Hawke was in the audience, saw it, loved it, and then recommended it to the people in the film people in New York, who then passed it on to Amy Taubin, who's a news reporter and reviewer, and then that passed on to Miramax and stuff like that. So being that this wasn't a film that was produced by Universal, this wasn't a film being produced by Fox. So, which, if it comes in, it goes. If you hear who the director is, that's one thing or another. And this is back in '93, '94, mind you.
Yeah.
This is when the Rodriguez's, the Tarantinos, the Jarmusch, things like that. These filmmakers were being highlighted because they were taking things literally independently, funding it themselves, casting them themselves, and having themselves in the films as well. So the fact that the focus was on the filmmaker itself and a very unique kind of script, in a sense, that it wasn't the type of film you normally saw get kind of a mass appeal that the first one kind of did.
Right. It's very unique.
Yeah, and and the writing was the star of that movie, hands down. It didn't have big name stars in it. It didn't have amazing cinematography. It didn't have amazing crash scenes or kind of crazy kind of
gratuitous nudity.
No, it was literally was camera on sticks, dialogue talking with interspersed cuts of cats pooping in litter boxes and hockey games on roofs.
And that's great. That just goes to show that you don't need all that stuff to make an entertaining movie. And
Right.
This is why I kind of believe that characters are slightly more important than the story, because if you like the characters, then you'll follow whatever they do and you'll listen to whatever they say. And that's just sort of how I interpret Clerks.
Well,
as a
yeah,
whole.
I mean that's what television is. Television is you're following these characters from situation to situation, thus a sitcom. And so if you can write really great characters, and those actors can portray characters that are loved or hated, or just, in other words, hold your interest,
Yeah.
you can write any story you want around those characters.
Well, and good dialogue.
Yes, especially
Well, yeah.
the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because Tarantino would do his long dialogue stuff too, but no offense to him, he's a great filmmaker and all, but I just space out, and I'm just like, it's not that interesting to me. So if you can pick in a death match for dialogue, would it be Tarantino, Guy Ritchie, or Kevin Smith would win?
Kevin.
For dialogue?
Yeah, for dialogue.
Well, for dialogue, I like Kevin. Kevin, that's the one thing you
Yeah,
can't
same here.
overcount. His dialogue is really, really good.
Does he get to
Agreed.
bring a hockey stick to the death match?
Yes, with the number 37 jersey on it.
Well, I want to ask you, Brian.
Sure.
Did you, after Clerks, did you decide not to come to Hollywood? I mean, you're out there in Pennsylvania. You kind of carved out this niche for yourself. You haven't pursued a whole lot of the bigger opportunities that were probably, I don't know. I'm assuming that you had a few bigger opportunities after a movie like this. What was it like for you after this?
Yeah. So when we got back from Sundance, and then Kevin took that whole Kevin and Scott and David took that whole summer to put the film together because Miramax had bought it in January of '94, and then it didn't get released until October of '94 because they had a whole new sound mix that they put into it. They blew it up from 16 to 35 millimeter, and so by the time I moved out to LA, I did it in short terms. I did it in 2 weeks at a time here, 3 weeks at a time here. I'd go out for pilot season. I'd meet with different agencies. I had an LA agent for a couple of years. And I was always being auditioned for things that were extremely tight. That were just that, like I would walk into castings and I would see like 7 other dudes already wearing Van Dykes. And I'm like, motherfucker Jones, I had the Van Dyke before none of y'all guys had it. What's up? And, like even when I was, even when I was meeting with one agent in Burbank, he was like, "You're going to audition for that Clerks TV show, right?" I was like, "What? Clerks TV show?" And he said, "Yeah, Don Rio, producer, is doing a Clerks pilot TV sitcom on the Warner Brothers lot. You're auditioning, right?" I'm like, "It's the first time I'm hearing it." He goes, "Well, I'll set up the audition for you." I'm like, "Okay." And then I called Kevin. Kevin didn't know about it. A bunch of people didn't know about it. So I called Kevin, and then Kevin got in touch with those people and signed on as an executive producer. They only did the pilot. Jim Brewer was a part of it. Felicity, the girl who played Felicity, she's also on the Americans.
Oh my God. I know her name. I can't remember.
I want to say the other Felicity.
No. She was on the Americans. She was.
I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, she was in it as well, and none of us, like Jeff auditioned. I auditioned. I don't know if Marilyn auditioned.
No, I didn't know about it until you told me.
I think Lisa auditioned, and none of us got cast. And as a matter of fact, Kevin left the project because he was like, "This is silly," and it was a very kind of Saved by the Bell kind of bubblegum pop kind of sets, unrealistic kind of sets.
Saved by the Bell was very realistic, sir.
They butchered it. They butchered it.
The dialogue, but I mean, it was also the sentiment too. It was the dialogue and everything was just very kid pop, teen friendly, and not, Generation X hating life and it's all your fault kind of situation. And so you could see the I think YouTube has, if you put Clerks TV pilot up there, you'll find it on YouTube somewhere. And Jim Brewer played Randall. Some other dude played Dante. And then the girl who played Felicity, she played
Carrie Russell. I looked it up. I was like, it's bugging me. I got to figure it out.
So she played Veronica. And then one of the things Kevin said was when he left, like, you can't use the Jay and Silent Bob characters because Kevin had actually secured the rights of those licenses when he originally sold Clerks. So I would go out there for different things, but I was actually getting hired for more independent film work back home here on the East Coast, in New York, up in Toronto, and things like that. So the back and forth wasn't really worth it at the time. And then it was just like I was working more from New York.
Well, I gotta say, from my point of view, I love this film. It changed my life. It told me that, grab a camera and just go make a movie. Just go do that. And it was the dynamic between Dante and Randall, more so than Jay and Silent Bob, that really did it for me. And that was the inspiring part of the movie.
It's a great yin and yang.
Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah, working with Jeff has always been great. Even when we worked on Clerks 2, we were brought together to work to run lines, to do a real, a table read of the script. And Kevin had blocked out a whole month to rehearse. They flew me out from New York and put me up in this long-term hotel apartment kind of situation, literally like 2 blocks from where Kevin lives. And we did 2 rehearsals at the office. We're just reading the dialogue, which we then brought in Rosario Dawson, and Jay was there, and Kevin and Scott Mosier read other roles. And literally after like 3, I think it was 2 readings and 1 other read, he's like, all right, we're good. And we weren't shooting for like another 3 weeks because they were in pre-production. So Kevin's like, you want to hang out here in LA for the next, we've already paid for the whole month. You're more than welcome.
Why the hell not?
So that's what we did. And then I would travel with him. He would, we would play songs for me for the soundtrack. I'm like, ooh, dude, that sounds great. And then we would go down because we filmed Clerks 2 down in Orange County, down in Buena Vista, right near Knott's Berry Farms.
Yeah.
And I remember just walking in this old, about to be demolished Burger King that we were now taking over as the movies. And we would do blocking rehearsals there as they were building the movies around us. And it was kind of surreal. And that chemistry with me and Jeff was just spot on. And so I'm hoping that when we get the new script of Clerks 3 that, it's very Randall heavy, this script, that we'll be able to get it up there and pick it up again. I mean, it was funny, literally just before all this hit the fan with self-quarantine and stuff. We had done 2 shows together. Jeff had finally been convinced. It took a year for the agency that me and myself and Marilyn and a bunch of us are represented by ZSC Entertainment to sign him on as a client to do conventions. Because fans have always been like, does Jeff do conventions? Oh my God, I have so many things I want him to sign. And so we did, our first one was just outside of Detroit called Astronomicon, and it was a huge turnout.
Awesome.
And then our second one was GalaxyCon in Richmond, Virginia, another big turnout. And then that's when everything started closing, which I jokingly say it's because Randall came out. He brought the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and this is the end of life as we know it.
Yeah.
So I hope we can get back on the road again, just to get back, because the chemistry of just us being together was right back on it again. We were doing Q&As together at those 2 shows, and it was, just like it always is.
I'm sure it'll be like riding a bike. It's like maybe second nature right now. If the chemistry's there, it's probably going to stay there.
Hey, can I jump in with some random pop culture questions? I'd
By all
like to
means.
start with Marilyn. What are you binge watching right now as you're in quarantine? What's on your Netflix playlist?
Well, this morning I started watching Dead to Me, because that just came on. It's like, honestly, it's like there's so many shows that I have watched, but I'm also binge watching on Hulu quite a few things. And oh my God, I forgot what was Expedition Unknown.
Oh,
Josh is so funny.
with Josh. Yeah. It's a great show.
Josh Gates, yeah.
Yes. Because I noticed that was on there, so I started watching that. And it's like, and if I just want something very just light and funny and just like nothing that I have to really kind of pay attention to, that's awesome.
I love the Yeti episodes.
What?
I love the hunting for the Yeti episodes.
Oh, I don't think I've gotten there yet.
Oh, they're great. Those are some of my favorites.
No, because I'm on the second season. I'm on the second season right now.
Yeah, I like when he does his ghost stuff.
Oh yeah. I used to watch some of the other stuff too, but because I only have Netflix, Hulu, and now Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, only because of my daughter. But those are. I don't have cable, so.
Yeah, join the club. That's the way to go.
And the CW app, I have access to the CW app on Roku, so that's another thing that I watch.
Brian, what's on your playlist?
I watch a lot of, reality making and improving shows. So, Gas Monkey Garage, Rides. I'll watch Homes on Homes. I'll watch People's Court. But then there are the shows that I absolutely have to watch. Like I love Young Sheldon. Like I was a Big Bang Theory, and then when that series ended, I picked up Young Sheldon, so I'll watch that. I also like watching a lot of the nighttime talk shows. So Colbert, Seth Meyers, things like that. I'll watch Bill Maher, and I'll watch John Oliver, things like that. And that fills my time around watching news, and then it's funny because I'll watch just. ESPN is playing like World Series of Poker, and so is the CBS network. World Series poker, like the extended games, like, you know, 7
Oh.
card stud
Yeah.
and all these games that didn't really make it to the broadcast. So now
Right.
they're airing them. They're just digging out anything for content. And I was like, oh, I'd want to watch some 7 card stud. Sure, all right.
Why the
And
hell
I'll
not?
I'll burn an hour just watching guys playing 7 card stud. But I've also, you know, I've been on people's podcasts at night, so sometimes the time frame like this is during certain shows, and so I'll TiVo those. Otherwise, I was playing poker online with some friends. They have like a home game that they have as part of one of the poker websites, and we Zoomed to, you know, talk shit to each other.
Right. That's what you do.
Right, and then have the other screen have the actual game going on. So
Excellent.
Have
That's
you
been
ever have you ever won with a royal flush? Because that's impossible for me.
no, I didn't win with a royal flush, but I did win the other night on Tuesday. It was 10 entrants and of all of our friends, including Ming Chen, by the way, one of your guests. And I beat him. I beat them all.
Good.
Nice.
I knew you would.
Okay, take it or leave it. The hype behind the Tiger King. Who wants to go first?
Leave it.
Leave it.
Leave it. I'm not even watching it. I'm not.
Yeah, me neither.
interested.
Good. I'm
Not
I'm so
interested.
glad. Yeah, me neither. It's like I'm just like, nah.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know, when I hear it's about a guy and there's, you know, there's a murder and all this other stuff. Yeah, but the whole abuse of animals, I'm not a big fan of. And these kind of private kind of zoos, I'm not a big fan of either. So when people were telling me the synopsis of what it was all about, and I was like, yeah, you know, it's such fertile ground for me to mine for stand-up comedy, but I'm not, because I'm not going to give a dime to any show that's going to eventually. And now this guy's looking to get pardoned by the president. I just like, no.
It's become a
no.
big thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
promise I'll let you ask a question, Art, but I got one more. For Brian,
Sure.
you have all the comic books on the wall behind you. You're an aficionado. You're a geek.
No, I'm not an aficionado, just a fan.
Just a fan.
Tone it back.
What
Ming,
is
like
your-
Ming Chen, Mike Zabsig, Walter, and in our circle, Kevin, obviously,
Right.
Bernadette, all those guys, those are aficionados. You know, Dave Mandel is a huge collector, another aficionado. I am just a fan who likes
Okay.
11 by 17 posters. of
Even
certain
better.
comics.
Even better. Your favorite comic book movie.
Ooh, that's so tough. Because there's a bunch of them. I'm a big Watchmen, actually. So I'll
Yeah.
say the Watchmen movie.
There we go.
Marilyn?
I remember. I mean, that's
Oh.
the series that I read as I literally waited for every issue to come out to read. It was that and Akira that were at the time around the same time that I was just like, I got to have the next one. It was such a drug.
Great comic.
Do you have one, Marilyn?
One, no. I mean,
It's too many.
but I mean, if I had to pick DC over Marvel, I'd probably watch a lot more of the Marvel, you know, over and over again.
Yeah. Now, if you could play a superhero, let's start with Marilyn, who would it be?
Well, I guess Wonder Woman.
From DC.
Excellent.
I mean, you know,
You wouldn't watch yourself.
I realize that that is DC, but I don't know. There's just something about that, and maybe because I wish I was taller. I don't know.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'd play Wonder Woman too.
I mean, because as far as Marvel, oh God, now I'm gonna blank on their names. Yeah, I'm gonna totally blank on their names.
All right, we put her on the spot. It's all good. Brian, superhero you'd like to play?
Well, there was a campaign at one time.
Oh, that's a.
Ooh.
Oh,
Getting a glare. Oh, well. Anyway, that was my.
Very cool.
That's my mobile camera. But right over this shoulder, yeah. Doctor Strange. At one time there was a fan petition when they were talking they were going to make the movie to have Brian Holland should totally. This is before I think Cumberbatch was announced.
Yeah.
Totally, Brian Holland should play Doctor Strange, and I was like, wow, I'm kind of flattered.
It's that
and
go-to.
it literally it was just because I already have the prerequisite facial hair that I would have loved to have done it. You know, I couldn't be as suave and debonair and handsome as Cumberbatch is, but I think I would appeal more to the every guy and every gay fan out there, probably. Like, he's kind of that bear kind of type I can see much better, although I'm sure Cumberbatch gets it as well.
That's great.
Total bear.
Yeah, total.
Well, going back to Clerks on TV, there was a short-lived Clerks cartoon. It was only like 6 episodes, but I thought it was awesome. And looking back on it, do you wish that it went longer, or how do you feel about it now?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I wish it went longer. I mean, at the time, I thought it was going to be My Simpsons, and what I mean by My Simpsons, that I'd be working 30 freaking years on it. So, yeah, it was definitely something that I wish we could have done much, much longer. It was the type of thing that fans I get all the time go like, you guys should totally bring that back. So we have we have the 6 episodes that we did do for ABC back in 2000 on DVDs right now, and I think it's available for streaming on Amazon and whatnot. But yeah, it was the type of thing that we had a lot of fun. It was a showrunner, and the writer, producer, and showrunner was Dave Mandel and Kevin Smith. And Dave Mandel is also known for running Veep, and he worked on He's working on Curb Your Enthusiasm, I think, right now.
Okay, cool.
He was one of the main writers for SNL many years, Seinfeld for many, many years. Very, very funny guy, and a huge, huge comic book fan. He was the guy at the end of every cartoon episode who's like in the beach chair, like, have a good day, him.
Oh yeah, that was him?
Yeah. Thank you for watching. That was him. That was Dave Mandel. He also wound up in the Jay and Silent Bob movies, both the first Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back movie and the new Jay and Silent Bob reboot movie as the guy outside drinking 2 cups of coffee.
Oh, okay.
So he did that as they were trying to get on the bus in the very first Strikes Back movie. And then it was when they were leaving the movies, he was outside drinking 2 coffees. So I know that Kevin had talked about this at one time, and he talked about it recently on either his podcast or someone else's podcast.
Yeah, they put out the information.
That there's a producer, there's a showrunner right now with 2 very successful shows on the ABC network, who was a big fan of the show back in 2000. And now that he's in a position of, suggesting and show running shows, and greenlighting them, he's on Kevin's side to bring him to maybe bring that back, since ABC Television, Disney kind of own that cartoon property. It's not that hard for them to just reconstitute it and bring us all back. Now, to bring it back on ABC, I don't know. To bring it back as maybe a Disney Plus title, I think that would be the best way, because then we don't have to worry about FCC language issues and topics and stuff like that, because it was definitely one of my favorite episodes, my favorite jobs ever to do. I mean, you just walked in, literally it's just a voiceover, and we had so many great guest stars as well, which was really, really cool. I mean, come on, we had our own Outbreak episode ourselves.
You predict
don't tell me that's not timely right now. So it's those type of things. It's that cartoon world that allowed Kevin as a writer and Dave as the writer producer and the writing crew in general, and us to take these characters into so many different bizarre worlds.
Yeah, it was definitely whacking it, and it was great at how it expanded on like the View Askew or Clerks universe. And I hope we see Leonardo in Clerks 3.
Yeah, and by the way, brilliantly played and voiced by Alec Baldwin. I mean, he was another guy that just you couldn't go wrong with someone like that. He was just awesome to work with, and we got to spoof so many type of movies and shows. This was the Bad News Bears episode, which was really funny, and so that was the type of thing, is people like Dave Mandel, who have connections, who had worked with Alec Baldwin and numerous other projects, especially Saturday Night Live, who was able to make phone calls and like, hey man, how would you like to come on board? Same thing like when Kevin was casting for the new Jay and Silent Bob reboot, he would just call some of these people who were like, yeah, I'm a huge fan, I totally want to be a part of it. And you could bring in people again and again, which was a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Marilyn, you and Brian are such a significant part of a movie that had a big impact on pop culture. He had mentioned that one of the coolest things that he had done was be able to voice his character in the cartoon. What are some of the cool things that you got to do over the last 26 years that you didn't think you'd ever have a chance to do?
Oh gosh. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, okay. So I've worked on 3 sci-fi movies with a writer-director that's a friend. And I feel like working a sci-fi show or film is actually pretty cool.
I mean, look at the guns you get to carry. Come on, Marilyn.
Thanks.
Wow, that's bigger than me.
That's 37 and 38. Oh.
But I don't know. It's nothing. I mean, nothing really kind of stands out for me because anything that I've worked on, I've just really enjoyed working on.
That's great.
For different reasons. Now, hopefully, the Clerks cartoon does get brought back, and hopefully, I can actually get to work on that.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
bring everybody back.
Yeah. But I would have to say probably the coolest thing, though, and now that I think about that, is the fact Clerks, having been the first film and working with Brian, who was a friend at that time, and you know, and after all these years, still a very good friend. So probably that.
That's great. We're getting the signal to wrap it up real
What?
soon.
I want to talk all day, damn it.
Stargate gets to gate themselves in and stay 20 minutes, but the Clerks got to hit the road.
Typical.
I'm sure we could go on and on and on. It'd be no problem by me, but they're going to pull the plug. Brian, why don't you take us out with one of some crazy story, someplace that you never thought in a million years you'd end up?
Me?
Yeah.
So you said.
Yeah.
You know what? I've been able to do a lot of really cool things, meet a lot of great people, and travel some really cool places. So getting to go to the Sundance Film Festival for the very first time in '94, and then going back 20 years later, I was there in 2014, and it was just just to see how Park City, Utah had changed. Getting to go to the Cannes Film Festival back in 2005 for Clerks 2, and having the main screening of it there, with a 7-minute standing ovation that followed afterwards, is something that has always taken my breath away. Getting to work with some of the most amazing people that I have over the years. So I am the first to say that I am truly blessed that people really got to love what I've done out of a film with, dick and fart jokes and caskets being knocked over.
37 dicks.
37 dicks and snowballing and all this other stuff. And I got to work with one of the greatest and most prolific writers of our generation, and very funny and such a sweet guy in general as well, to do such cool stuff and to do these type of things again and again. And people like yourselves still to this day, 26 years later, enjoying what we did so many years ago when we were just nobodies.
Well, we want to thank you for taking the time. You've provided a tremendous amount of joy for us in the last 26 years.
You.
I love this film. I've loved what it's done for me. Art will express to you over and over and over again. He feels the same way. Thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time. We will see you guys soon. We want everybody to go check out Brian O'Halloran's podcast. What's it called? One more time.
The O'Halloran. It's pretty much my name with the last letter T on it.
Halloran. There we go. Check it out. And Marilyn, is there anything you want people to check out?
Check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right, guys. This is the
Excellent.
THS.
Thank you so
After
much for your
Dark.
time, guys. It was
Thank
amazing.
you.
We'll see everybody soon.
Thank you, buddy.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
guys.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Pop Expo. And right now we have the great Brian Staveley here to talk about his life, his creative process, writing, and most importantly, our trilogy and our favorite fantasy and just the whole world building. I want to talk about all of it.
Let's talk about all of it, yeah.
All of it. So welcome. How are you holding up? I can see that you have some beautiful, gorgeous landscape to be hiding out in for quarantine. How's it going?
Yeah, no, I can't complain. I have it easy. I mean, I live in pretty rural Vermont. That's my trash can there. I keep it outside the window because the bear gets into it. And so I have it there. It's right outside my bedroom window. So when I hear the bear trying to get into it at night, I can come running downstairs and chase the bear off.
That's some challenging problems that I got to tell you out here in LA and San Diego we're not dealing with right now.
That's normal life. That's just normal. The bear's always here this time of year. In the spring, it's always hungry. So yeah, no, it's easy. I got a lot of trails to run and bike on, and
that's great.
Yeah, I think I have a pretty good quarantine situation.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad, and it's so good to see you. So what we want to do is we want to fill in some people who might not know all about you, your amazing background, and how you came to be an author and write fantasy, but also about the trilogies. Let's go ahead and start with you, though. Give a little background about how you got into writing and your amazing teaching background, and some of the creative process for you.
I did my undergrad and grad degrees in creative writing, but I was writing poetry at that point. You know, this was like 20 years ago,
right?
Which was great. Those were great years of my life. But you can't really make a living writing poetry. It's just not. You know, a poetry bestseller sells like 40 copies.
Right.
So I got into teaching as a way that I could keep writing, but also pay the bills. And I love teaching. It was I taught high school. At a few different schools in the Northeast, taught English, but also, and this is sort of relevant to the books, I taught ancient world history and comparative religion and philosophy, all stuff that kind of crops up a little bit in the trilogy. So as I was doing that, I just thought, well, maybe I could write a novel. And so I sort of saved up money for a while and took a year off from teaching, moved to Asia, and wrote what ended up being the first draft of The Emperor's Blades. Although it looked very little like what eventually was published.
Which you ended up with. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So when you're in it, I love that you say that the ancient history has a little bit of impact. The world building. Yeah, exactly. The world building in the whole series, and I know even in the one-off that's within the world, is really, it's obvious to anybody who loves history, who loves mythology, that you've brought a lot into that world building. So can you talk a little bit about, especially when you just said that your first draft doesn't necessarily look like what we read, how did that creative process work for you to bring in your experience as a teacher, but teaching writing and what you were absorbing in Asia, watching, looking, and reading and studying while you were there?
I mean, part of the thing is that I had no idea what I was doing when I wrote the first book. I mean, I sort of eyeballed the first book of Game of Thrones and the first book of The Wheel of Time, and I was like, so I should write something that's like 250,000 words long, and just kind of went from there. And so only when I'd finished the first draft did I realize, there's all these sort of market considerations about, length and the target age of the book, all this stuff that I didn't really think about the first time through. I just wrote.
Do you think that was a good thing as a first-time writer, that maybe not having all of those pressures and those issues to think about, to adhere to, helped you because you just did what you loved?
It could be. I think whatever gets you to the end of a draft is a good thing. And I think for some writers that's freedom, and for some writers it's constraint. Right? Some people thrive with no rules and just being able to get everything down, and then they come back to it later. And some people just wilt under that, and they want some sense of structure or guidance. So it worked for me. Eventually I got there, but it took, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to get that first draft down. So there's probably a more efficient way to do it.
But I think that's important. And I do want to ask you, because you have some great stories from Asia. Some of what you were doing and living in Asia obviously impacts so much of the world building, the universe, for all of the family, for how you were looking at this storyline, not just for this one book, but whether or not you were
The whole
informed
world,
about
yeah.
that up front or not, and you were thinking, this is going to be an amazing world that I'm going to do eventually
Oh,
4
yeah,
books for.
yeah.
But, you know, what were you looking at in Asia that triggered, you know, some fun anecdotes?
Well, you know, so being in Asia was useful because I didn't have any friends there, and I was in different I was in, you know, Thailand and Mongolia
Right.
and China and Vietnam, so kind of like East and Southeast Asia is where I was.
Mhm.
I didn't have any friends. I didn't speak any of the languages, so it kind of kept me on task, just
Right.
in a practical way. I'd be like, maybe I'll goof around, and then I'd be like, well, I don't really have anything to do, so I'll just write some more. But also, you know, the books, I didn't want to write a fantasy series that was set in a Western European,
Mhm.
you know, analog.
Yep.
I also didn't want to write a fantasy series that was set in, you know, whatever, Tang era China, or, you know, some
Right.
other specific place in time. It really is its own invented world. But being in a place that's just outside of your normal experience just makes you look at everything a little bit different, right? You just
Yeah.
notice things that you wouldn't normally notice. Everything from like, what are the sidewalks made out of?
Right.
You know,
The
to
detail, the little details.
all the little details. And some of those details, you know, I used to, in one of the towns I lived in Laos, there was a monastery up on top of this hill in the center of town. And there's a town called Luang Prabang. And just to get exercise, I would run the steps. I'd run repeats on the steps up and down to the monastery. And it was brutally hot, and I was like sweating.
I'm exhausted just listening to the story part.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't do it.
And like the monks would kind of sit up at the top and heckle me in ways that I didn't understand. But you know, everything about that is different. You know, I do a lot of running in New England as well,
Right.
but it's just a different experience. Everything from like the smells that you're encountering to the physical sensation of the air on your skin.
Right.
And it's just a good reminder that like you got to pay attention to all of those details. And I didn't just lift them, you know, in whole cloth. I didn't just say, well, this scene is going to be like that monastery
Right.
in
Right.
Laos. But it was a reminder to be attentive to those details in the creation of the world.
And that's obvious in the stories. I mean, it's within each novel are so many individual stories, and not even just by chapter, within the chapters that are so rich in detail. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the weaponry detail is phenomenal throughout the series. And I think that you know, just being a fan and what we read in all of our lovely fan forums, that again is an example of the detail that you've spent on these. And so when you're talking about the 5 years from the first draft to the first novel, when then you're looking at your second and third, or 1.5, 2, 3, that how did you start then after you'd done that first one to either structure that or narrow it down or look for other details? Did you start to jot ideas down just as you saw them? Oh, that could be for the second story.
Yeah, I think that I mean, once I switched into writing full time, just the engine in the back of my mind is always now kind of working on these books.
Okay.
Like it's not just when you're sitting down to write. Because when I was writing the first book, I was teaching, you know, and so during the school year, I could really get no writing done at all.
Right.
I wrote on summer breaks and then, you know, winter break and spring. I read on the breaks, which was, you know, again, it's not the most efficient process because usually the first couple of weeks of that was me just finding my pace again and switching my brain,
diving back into it.
Yeah, instead of thinking about, you know, 80 students that I'm trying to take care of for that year and having my brain working on that in the background, having my brain work on these 80 characters who are major and minor, you know, running through the series.
Right.
But yeah, once I was able to make that switch full time, yeah, everything just goes into that. It's all grist for the mill, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you start to do it.
Whatever I'm reading to what I'm seeing to conversations with friends to current politics. I mean, it's all going in there.
It's all going into and to that point, everybody's different. Your style, do you storyboard? Do you put notes up on a wall? What does your writing look like? How physically, how are you doing it?
No, I try. I mean, my editor always, or my publisher always, they always want a synopsis of the next book. And I always obligingly write them one. And I think we all know that it's just a complete fiction. I mean, like, it's not going to be like that.
I'm pulling it out of my
Yeah,
ear.
because I just have no. I mean, I just don't know. You have to follow the characters where they're going to go, and they often don't go where I expect.
Oh, and isn't that the beauty of what you've written? Is there a character in particular that when you started either the first or the last book that you never thought was going to come front and center or become important to you that suddenly became important?
Yeah, there's a secondary character in The Emperor's Blades, which is the first book in the trilogy, named Gwenna Sharp, and she's kind of like a Navy SEAL, and she's in a group of other Navy SEALs, and she was always meant to be a sort of secondary character, but as I kept, she doesn't have a point of view in the first book. She's purely secondary. In the second book, she gets 5 chapters, and then in the third book, she gets like a third of the book probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm writing a new trilogy now. In the first book of that trilogy, she gets like half that book.
Yay!
So and that is not something I expected, but it just she kind of grew into the role, and she a little bit cannibalized a role that I thought was going to be played by a different character, Valen, who was one of the original POV characters. Some of the stuff that she ends up doing is stuff that I kind of thought he was going to do, but
interesting. Okay, I love that.
He wasn't able to do it, but by the time we got to some of those events, he wasn't the right character for that.
He wasn't stepping into that where she fit that, whatever that action was.
Yeah.
And I adore her. She is so completely opposite the spectrum of who I am, and so it's literally a character that, as a woman, you're reading this character thinking, oh, I aspire to be her. This is amazing. So she's very inspirational for just, I'm sure you read this, but for a lot of girls and women, she is extraordinarily inspirational. And to have not just one of your 3 main characters, the leads, be a woman, but to have a secondary character. So I love that that's who you brought up, that she became more than what you thought.
Yeah.
Because she's, for a lot of us, she's kind of our favorite. It is a very aspirational personality, and she's human human, and she has failings, but we can aspire to do the things that she does, which is really, that's really cool to hear about how she developed for you.
Well, there's a scene in the third book, in The Last Mortal Bond, when Valen, this other sort of Navy SEAL character, he's looking at her. They've been separated for a long time.
Right.
He's looking at her and he's thinking, like, that was supposed to be me. He's like, that was supposed to be my life.
Oh, right.
And she's looking at him and she's thinking, what the hell happened to you?
Yeah.
And that was, how those were my feelings about those characters.
Oh, I love it. And that's how it got to the whole point, is that's kind of the culmination of that.
Yeah, exactly. So that cool. Was a very, an unexpected thing. And then, another character, so the main character of Skullsworn, Pyr, who is an assassin and a priestess of the god of death. I originally wrote her as a male character. I didn't know that. Blades. Yeah. And my editor at the time, Marco Palmieri, said, what if you changed the gender of that character? And I did, and it was such a better character. And
I love that.
And she became like one of the big, fan favorite characters. I mean, to the point where she has her own novel now.
I know. I mean, she is, again, it is, and it's interesting too, because then did it change the background of the mythology too, of who she was as a priestess? Did you have to go back and change some of that? Her background story?
What I very much, no. When I decided to flip her gender in the first book, I was determined not to change anything about the character. I was determined I wanted to leave the character as is. Now, that doesn't actually work, because all kinds of details, the details read different ways if you change the gender of a character.
True.
But I left all the details the same just because I was intent on doing that.
Right.
But a lot of her backstory was not totally clear to me until I wrote Skullsworn.
Got it. Okay.
I knew the broad beats of what she had been through and the kind of place that she came from, but I didn't know a lot of those specific details until I wrote that, which I wrote after the trilogy. So
right. Yeah. So, and that's great too, because it could inform all of those backgrounds. And to that point, she's got this big fan base. Do you do you pay attention a lot to the fandom? Do you spend time there? Is there anything that ever informs it? Because I know that for writers and showrunners that we interview and talk to a lot, that's always a very careful line that you have to walk. So how's that for you, looking at this amazing fandom that's out there that is not just passionate, but falls literally and figuratively on their sword for certain characters?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the most connected writer out there. I mean, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, but I'm not on them every day. I'm findable for the people who really want to find me, and often that's either, direct message on Facebook or emails. I get a lot of emails. And so the interactions I have with fans tend to be really positive because they're relatively substantive. Often people will write me, and this is one of my favorite kind of interactions, just telling me things that I screwed up. People will have different areas of expertise, right? Either they know horses really well, or they're, a vet or a doctor or something. Like I had one person, this woman wrote me and she was like, "Hey, I love your books, but I just have to tell you, there's this scene, I think it's in The Emperor's Blades, where somebody's testing how deep a wound is by like putting their finger in the wound and seeing if they can puncture, like seeing if they can reach the liver." I forget what the detail is, some detail like that. And she's like, I actually tried this with the cadaver the other day. And you can't, it doesn't work. I forget the detail in my book, but whatever it was,
my gosh,
it was wrong. She's like, yeah, it's not, thought you might want to know that's
I
not
just
right.
love the fact that it wasn't that she'd had an experience and told you, it's that she read the book, this is her background, and then she went and tried to execute on that actual action.
I think she taught in med school or something. I forget what.
But that's crazy.
But yeah.
I love that.
I get, there are a lot of people who are often very gracious, but they have corrections to
make,
Super.
Hey, and that's why we love the fandoms that come with all of, especially fantasy, because it's and I know I keep saying this, but you've built an enormously gorgeous, deep, complicated, complex, and enjoyable world. So the fans are going to feel personally that they're in the middle of that world. I
hope so. I mean, that's
how they're going to feel,
right? Yeah,
I love it. Well, one of the questions I want to ask you is, what are series or fantasy or sci-fi that you have read, and that you've loved, that you talked a little bit about? Well, when I'm writing the first book, I was looking at the first book of the Game of Thrones series, but what is it that maybe informed you and made you go in this direction for fantasy?
Well, I read fantasy voraciously when I was growing up, and even as an adult when I was doing other stuff, that was always kind of like the thing I would go back to.
Right.
I just need to like immerse myself in a book. I'd ask my friends who also read fantasy, like, what's good? What should I read? But, I grew up on Ursula Le Guin and Tolkien, obviously. But I think Le Guin, I mean, they're both brilliant. They're so different. But I've always loved Ursula Le Guin. The older I get, the more I love her.
Isn't that the case? Because same thing, you read it when you're a teenager, or I was a teenager. And then I just reread a couple of months ago because Joe Malazzi recommended, I think you should reread this. And I hadn't read it in a long time, in a long time. And it was a radically different insight for me now at this age which would be true for any book. But I was surprised at how much there were a couple layers I missed that anybody would have missed at 18 that I was missing.
And those books are so economical. I mean, any of the ones, but I'm thinking about like the Earthsea books at the moment. But she makes do with right now. I mean, I write huge books, so I'm guilty of this. Right now, lots of people write really big fantasy novels, and she didn't.
No, she was spare.
Yeah,
and it's very, very deep. Well, at least for me, when I was 18, and of course, that's when everything is contemplate your navel. So she could have written, half a page, and I would have spent 16 days on just that one page. But she's very beautiful. Well, to that, what are some things that you're reading now during our quarantine that you're enjoying that you would recommend? Because you've said, people have recommended. What would you recommend for people?
I'm all over the place. I'm not actually reading a lot of fantasy right now because I'm hip deep in my own book, and so I'm taking a little break from it. But I just finished a kind of, I guess it's a mystery novel called The Lost Man that's set in Australia. think the author's name is Jane Harper. Don't quote me on that, but the book is definitely called The Lost Man. It starts out with this premise. They're deep in the Australian outback, these ranches that are kind of barely getting by, and these two brothers meet on the edge of their ranches, and their third brother is dead. Is lying dead at this tombstone. And so you kind of have to unpack like what's going on with his family.
Cool.
And it's I don't read a ton in that genre, so it's really neat to see, somebody who's good at it put together a novel like that. So I really enjoyed that. I'm reading also a lot of books of mythology now for a different project that I'm kind of working on.
Oh, are you? Oh, that's good. I love it. So before we wrap up, what would be, and I know this isn't a fair question, but what's your favorite mythology that you're studying or reading right now? Pantheon.
It's always sort of the most recent thing that I've looked at, right? I mean, the world's religions and mythological structures are so rich. So right now I'm sort of looking at a lot of South Asian mythology, and also going back to Egyptian mythology, which I haven't really paid attention to since I was like in junior high or something.
Oh, right.
And so both of those are just, I just think fascinating.
It is. And you can do the deeper dive. Well, and to that end, I want to say thank you so much. And I want to tell everybody that we can also share, because there are interviews out there about this already, about Legion M being able to convert and adapt the Emperor Blades, the Chronicles of the Unhewn trilogy. And obviously, anybody wants more information about that, they can go over to legionm.com and see some interviews with you and some announcements about that.
No, they've got a great, very talented team working on it. So it's exciting stuff.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah. Brian, thank you so much for spending time with us, especially during this quarantine time. We appreciate it, and we love to hear more about it. And we can't wait to see what happens with the Emperor's Ruin and everything that's coming up.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
You bet. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. virtualpopexpo.com. We've got more coming up.
All right. Be well.
You too.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Virtual Pop Expo 2020. I'm your host, the Geek Gatsby, Bernie Bregman, and I am here with the most epic tribute band of all time. It is the Flux Capacitors joining us live here at Virtual Pop Expo. We've got all of the guys doing their fun stuff from isolation, fluxolation, if you will. I'm going to introduce everybody, starting with Ryan, who is the keyboard player for the Flux Capacitors.
Hey. I'm Ryan. I'm the keyboardist for the Flux Capacitors.
How's it going? That was scintillating, Ryan. We're gonna now get these similar sounding names out first, and we're gonna go with Brian, lead guitar for the Flux Capacitors.
How you doing, Brian? Guitar, Flux Capacitors.
And we're gonna swing it over to Mike and his luscious hair, the bass player for the Flux Capacitors.
I'm Mike. I am lead bass for the Flux Capacitors.
Implying that there is a rhythm bass. Is that even a thing, Mike? I'm not sure about that.
I also do rhythm bass. I'm lead rhythm bass.
Oh, that's amazing. He's in two places at once. The drummer of the Flux Capacitors, Jonas. What's up, everyone? I'm Jonas, drummer for the Flux Capacitors. And the lead singer, Tyler.
Hey, that's me. Hello.
All right, so I have known you guys for a very, very long time. I'm very fond of telling the story how, of all the people in the world, I discovered the Flux Capacitors in my friend's backyard, which you guys had been gigging for a while before that, but still, that was my introduction to the band, and we've gone and done some pretty cool stuff, and you guys have done some amazing things, and I think that it's perfect to talk to you guys. Not only are we going to have live music from you, or have had live music from you throughout the day, and throughout the weekend here at Virtual Pop Expo. But you guys are as plugged in and part of the convention scene as anybody else, and certainly as any single band. And so I think it's appropriate to have you guys in and talk about some of those experiences. You guys have played some incredible events, from Stan Lee's birthday party to the Ghostbusters anniversary event on the Sony lot. That is pretty cool. So let's talk about that a little bit. And 3 of you are still left from the original lineup, which is a hell of an accomplishment for any band 5 years later. But talk to us a little bit about the journey of the Flux Capacitors.
Well, if we didn't have that kind of drama and journey, I don't know if we'd even be considered a real band.
Right? Not legit if you don't have at least one member leave.
That's right. But see, Jonas has been with us. He was our substitute drummer from basically the get-go. Maybe within a year, he was our sub drummer. So, and Mike is the newest, but he's been with us for a year, and love him. It's great.
Very cool.
So what?
And Tyler, you left, you moved, and then you came back. And what was the experience like coming back to the Flux Capacitors?
Oh, well, honestly, it didn't really seem like much of a difference coming back in the sense of the live act. Like, it was pretty much just what we were doing before, except up to 11 instead of 10. And I will say, once Mike joined the group, that seemed to be the final piece of the puzzle, in the sense that everybody likes playing with each other, and the energy is there on stage, and it's like a little unit.
Very cool. Now, I know that some of that kind of fluctuation, if you will, in lineup is also due to not understanding really what you guys were in store for in the beginning, and then how much you guys took off kind of meteorically. It kind of impacted some people, and they couldn't put in the time that Flux was now demanding. What was the original vision? What did you set out to do? And I mean, talk about how crazy it's become.
Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, it started out with, my vision personally. I don't know what everybody, well, I kind of do now, but, my vision was to start a band and grow it, and like you said, other people didn't have that same vision, and that's why we have 2 new guys, or not new, but after the fact anyway. So, but I mean, yeah, anybody else want to take it from there?
Yeah. Okay. So, we started this thing 7.5 years ago. Maybe even longer. I don't know anymore, because who knows even what year this is now. But so we started this however long ago it was, and really just the idea was we just kind of wanted to play 80s and 90s music. It was just supposed to be a party band kind of thing, and it was going to be a way to vent. And so we just kind of got together over Craigslist, and it went from there. And
who put the ad up on Craigslist?
The original bassist, Brian.
Okay.
He did. And with our original drummer, Lynn, they were friends before we started this thing. They wanted to start the band, but we all wanted to start the band. So it was they just were like, hey, are there any musicians out there who might want to join us and start something? And we just happened to be looking at that moment, really.
That's crazy. No, that's really cool. And actually, I never knew that part, funny enough. And talk about the journey from wanting to just kind of be the party band, right, into these huge events that you guys have done, and what kind of, well, even before that, how did you settle on the Flux Capacitors, both as a name and really as a kind of a whole motif?
All right. And if you guys want to do it, anybody? Tyler?
That was a group texting thing? Is that what that was?
Okay, so we came up with this. We kind of wanted to be, we wanted to relate more to our audiences. If we were going to be playing 80s cover band, cover music, we wanted to relate more to the audience. And so at the time, we were just like, so what 80s movie can we glom onto and portray those characters on stage? And by doing that, maybe it will help us like speak without speaking necessarily to our audience. So we were 2 seconds away from being a Breakfast Club band.
What would the name have been?
I don't know. We didn't get that far, but we could. It was perfectly laid out because we could have each taken a character from the Breakfast Club, but we ended up settling. I mean, we almost did Ghostbusters.
Yeah, we talked about Ghostbusters.
Yeah, we could have been anything, but we settled on Back to the Future, and then it kind of just went crazy from there because, unbeknownst to any of us, like there was this huge community of Back to the Future lovers out there that stretches all the way up to the cast and crew. And we kind of filled a gap that I don't think anyone even knew existed at the time. So we came out, we were dressing up as characters from Back to the Future, and it started getting the attention of cast members, crew members, and people in the Back to the Future community, and it kind of went crazy from there.
Also, I think we play music from not just the 80s at this point, from so many decades, and the whole time travel thing is, the soundtrack of Back to the Future is amazing, but the time travel thing, because that's what we do, we go like back in time and, play music from all kinds of decades.
That's what I think makes what you guys do so cool. And that's what I think makes the idea one of those beautiful accidental pieces of gold, right? Is that by riffing off of Back to the Future and riffing off of time travel, it allows you guys a kind of a creative vehicle to go anywhere you want, right? You could go into the 70s and play some of that classic rock or some funk. You could go into the 90s and do some boy band stuff. You could come into grunge rock, whatever. You can go anywhere with that, right? So it kind of allows you guys to fit. And even thematically, your costuming can change sometimes, so that it's not always Back to the Future characters, or it's Back to the Future characters in another genre, in another time. So I think it's such a beautiful, happy accident. Mike, you're the newest member of the band. You're a year in now, so you're a hardened veteran, but they already were doing some crazy stuff. What was the appeal for you to join this band, and how did you come into the fold?
I had a couple of friends of mine had played with the Flux Capacitors before, so I was familiar with the group, and they've got a reputation for just being like a fun-loving, kind of like if you go to the show, it's just going to be like wild and just a giant party and everyone has like a blast, and I was like appealing to me because I just think that the energy with that is just inspiring to be around. The fans get involved, and it just becomes like an overall experience. I feel like it's something that people can like take home with them and tell their friends about and come out to the next round and get wild again.
Very cool. So to list some of the very amazing events you guys have played, the 35th anniversary of Ghostbusters I mentioned earlier, that Stranger Things season 3 event on the Santa Monica Pier that was like beyond sold out with lines a literal mile long, Stan Lee's 95th birthday party, the various huge Comic-Con parties that we've all done together, taking over San Diego Comic-Con nightlife and Los Angeles Comic-Con nightlife, and you've played with incredible stars from Dan Fogler, who's one of our guests this weekend, Run DMC, Clive Farrington from When in Rome. I've seen a ton of those. What for each of you has been the coolest of those gigs and the coolest of those guest appearances?
I'll take the first. That was Prescott Niles from the Knack. We played My Sharona, and it all starts off with this fat drum beat, right? And then the iconic bass line comes in, and if you play that with the guy who wrote and recorded it, and that comes in, that's just like, that's amazing. So that was like actually my personal favorite moment.
Very cool.
My personal favorite was definitely filming Back in Time, the documentary, and
right, you guys are on Netflix.
Well, it's not on Netflix anymore. It was on Netflix for 3 years. Then it went to Amazon. Now it's on Hulu streaming.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. But so all of the stuff that we did that surrounded that, at that time, this was back in 20, and maybe it wasn't even 2015. I think it was late 2014 when we filmed that thing. We were doing all kinds of crazy things and going like to the back lot of Warner Brothers and the back lot of Universal and running around the Hill Valley set, the Courthouse Square set, exploring inside the facades and, you know, going into the clock tower and checking all that stuff out and being there with Bob Gale, the executive producer and writer of the Back to the Future trilogy and cast members and stuff. That, you know, oh man, you know, we've had so many amazing things. Like that's just one of them. I can tell you a million more amazing things that stick out to me, but that was a really great experience to have. Yeah.
Mike, how about you?
Oh, I thought it was pretty cool actually. When we played what was it, the LA Comic-Con over at the Globe? That was in October, right? Yeah, past October. That was I mean, the show was just, I mean, it was awesome. It was, you know, packed, and it was fun we had a couple of the cast members from Salute Your Shorts come and jump up on stage with us, and like, you know, growing up when I was a kid, I used to watch that on Nickelodeon, so it was just like, you know, like right before we're going on stage and there's a couple cast members there with us and I was like talking to them. I'm like, shit, man. I'm like, I used to watch you guys. Like, this is rad, you know? So that was a fun, like, little throwback childhood, like, you know, like moment for me. I thought that was cool.
Is it neat? Is it kind of more steadying to meet those kinds of folks when you've got your instrument in your hand and like you're in your comfort zone, right? You're kind of the person on stage. That kind of help, you know, kind of alleviate any of that nervous energy of like, oh my God, you're so cool. I loved you growing up, all that stuff.
Like equalize it a little more.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I still felt like a little, I felt like a little fanboy still. I mean, I guess it was cool having an instrument in my hand, but I was, you know, I still felt like, I don't know, it was just cool, you know. It's like,
I mean, maybe a little bit, because sometimes they're like they're excited to be on stage with us. Like
everyone wants to be part of the band, right? Everyone wants to be part of the band. So
yeah,
it's like they immediately turn the other direction. They're like, this is the coolest thing, right? Because they're on stage with the band.
You know, it surprises you sometimes. Most musicians, no matter how seasoned they are, they always just have fun playing. It seems like they're always just excited to play. You know, that seems like happens every time. You know.
Look, we've had times when I'm like, holy crap, like I'm standing in the shadow of somebody who I've followed all my life and revered all my life. Like, for instance, the very first cassette tape I ever owned in like 1985 or 86, whatever, was Raising Hell by Run DMC. And I played the crap out of that, skated to it, listened to it with all my friends. And then, 30 some odd years later, I'm up on stage performing with Daryl from Run DMC, and that's happened 2 or 3 times by now. And so that's always been like an amazing, like, that's not something I can just go, this is normal, like, because it's just not, like that. Like, there's been celebrities I've met who are just totally on the level and cool, and then there's the guys who are just like, holy crap, like Stan Lee and Daryl and everybody. So
Tyler, do you have a favorite moment in the Flux history?
I do. We played San Diego Comic-Con a string of nights. What was that venue? What was the venue called? Was
Flux Club. Yeah. Flux.
Yeah, obviously a little confusing. Can't remember the venue. But that was a team effort. Everybody in the band was pulling their weight on that one, in the sense of not only the performance aspect, but the technical aspect and the audio and the lighting, and every member of the band had their fingers in their own spheres that they were trying to manage at the time. And it was one of those moments, I think on night 2, whenever we did We Are the Champions by Queen.
Yep.
That was, for me anyway, that was the moment when it was the culmination of everybody's efforts into a single moment. And the coolest part about that was it wasn't so much the band was playing to the crowd. Everybody were playing to each other. The entire venue was singing along, and it was very much a kumbaya moment for everybody in that building. So that's my favorite part of playing in this band is setting that stage, not only for us, but for the crowd and for our audience as well, and making everybody feel like they're involved. And that was the singular moment where I felt it strongest. was, you know, we are the champions doing, you know.
So
you know, that's what it's always. That's what it's always been about. Like, we didn't just do this whole thing so we could play covers, 80s and 90s covers, so we could play them for people. It wasn't like that. It's supposed to be like a community experience. That's why it's difficult to explain what it's like to be at like one of our shows to someone who hasn't done it, because it's not even something you can really get through watching videos or anything. It's something you gotta be there for, because the entire place is included in the performances and getting into it and stuff. And we all individually do our own musical stuff or artistic stuff outside of the band, but when we get together, it's really meant, it's like by the people for the people, and it's not about us like as a band. It's about the whole experience, really.
Very cool. And so you guys, obviously, with the rest of us and why we're here virtually today at Virtual Pop Expo, you guys have been stuck inside. What's it like for musicians having to kind of, you know, stay at home? You don't have that stage, that connection with the audience. And what have you guys been doing to pass that time?
Recording music, making music and recording music, you know. I mean, the best part of
recording and filming music, yeah.
The best part of playing music is getting out on a stage in front of, you know, hundreds of people and having fun, having a good time. So it's quite an adjustment to think that, oh, I play music and now I have nobody to play music for. All I can do is record it and enjoy it the way I did when I was 15, you know. It's the only way left, I think.
Tyler, I've seen a couple of the videos you're putting out on YouTube. Tyler Sings, if I'm not mistaken, and they look really, really awesome, and kind of get to show off that incredible range you've got. Tell us a little bit about that project. I feel like a lot of stuff came together, new gear, you rejiggered the room, and you've got this kind of really cool home setup.
The whole idea of doing like vocal covers online was really just to do something, because I don't really have a whole lot else going on right now. But I also picked up a saxophone about this time last year, and I'm trying to learn how to play that better. So
please tell me that the impetus for you playing the saxophone is so that you guys can do the Lost Boys sexy sax man.
Well, he's got to really get buff for that, man.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, no, we've talked about doing that song, I Still Believe, by Tim, what's his name? the buff saxophone dude from Lost Boys. Yeah, we will definitely play that song.
I'm looking forward to that, Tyler. I want to be there the first time you guys do that.
Cool. Yeah.
What's next? What are some songs you want to take on for those videos?
Oh, for my stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I've been really getting into this band called the Waterboys recently, another 80s group. And there's a song that they did called Medicine Bow, which is very much like, actually it makes sense for the whole situation right now, because lyrically it's about like a big storm that's coming, and the singer of the group is basically expressing, you know, I'm equipping myself to take on the storm. And I don't know, I like that song a whole lot. I'm also thinking about doing stuff from Muse and obviously some Queen stuff, you know. Yeah, Mike, yeah. And a whole bunch. Like there's no limits, you know. I could do some NXS, I could do whatever. Yeah.
I would love to see you guys play some Muse live. I think that'd be awesome. So looking forward to that. And you know, I'm always down for more Queen. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Actually, One Vision is my favorite Queen song, and it's like off the radar and nobody knows that song. But I would love to hear you guys do One Vision.
That'd be cool. I also like a Kind of Magic. Both of those. Yeah.
That's another good one. Absolutely. Of course, the reason I even know One Vision would be Iron Eagle, throwing it back to the 80s. So. Well, dude, if you haven't seen that ever or in a long, long time, go back. It's a great.
Louis Gossett Jr. and
yeah.
Who was the other main character?
Jason Gedrick was the main character.
Oh man.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Well, cool. This has been an awesome trip, kind of down memory lane. I've known you guys for so long, and it's so awesome that you guys are just doing some amazing, amazing stuff. And we're really happy to have you guys at Virtual Pop Expo. I hope that this thing gets listed soon and we get to see each other in the real world again. And I know it might be a minute before we have, 2,000 people in front of us again, but even if it's 300, I look forward to seeing you guys on the stage soon.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will see you guys somewhere in time. And thank you so much for being here today. And we're going to get back to the Virtual Pop Expo 2020.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Virtual Pop Expo. My name is ThunderScepter11, Twitch partner, and welcome to the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order Roundtable discussion. I have the pleasure of being joined by Blair Brown, producer, and Jeff Majors, lead level designer at Respawn Entertainment. Thank you both for being here. How is everything going?
It's going good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. So I wanted to start out by giving everyone an opportunity to get to know you both better. Could start with you, Blair. Please tell us about your background.
That's a loaded question. So, went to music school. Never knew you could. I always thought video games fell into two categories for a job at video games. One being you have to be an artist, and I can't draw, and the other being a coder, and math is hard. So I went into music, but I always loved games. And while you're a musician, you end up taking a lot of odd jobs. So I was bartending for a while, and one of my regulars, after a couple of years of getting to know them, said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody kind of like a production assistant, and you're kind of good with people, so why don't you apply for it?" So I applied. That was me getting my first job at BioWare Edmonton. Worked on Dragon Age Inquisition, Mass Effect Andromeda, something else, and then I was on Anthem for a bit, and then I moved over to Respawn when I saw the opening for Jedi Fallen Order for production, and they were all part of the were part of the same publisher, so it was just like, hey, I would like to transfer to that team because they're making Star Wars. So that's the short version of my career trajectory.
That's great. That's great. And Jeff,
for me, I went to school at USC. And while I was there, I didn't know what I was going to do, but they kind of ramped up the video game design program while I was there. So I kind of hopped on that major. And while I was there, some friends and I worked on this like puzzle platformer game for the DS as like a side project that ended up getting published. And I was able to kind of take that game and kind of show it to different people in the industry to try to get a job like in the AAA industry. So I ended up getting an interview at Sony Santa Monica to work on the God of War franchise. Came in, worked on God of War 3 and Ascension, God of War Ascension, and then worked on the start of the God of War 2018, the reboot. But Stig Asmussen, our game director for God of War 3, had moved over to Respawn, and it was just a really exciting opportunity to kind of start something from the ground up. I really admired Titanfall, the guys that made that. So I hopped on, was the fourth hire on a new third-person action adventure team that ended up growing into 150 plus people and eventually turned into the Star Wars team, and we shipped Jedi Fallen Order. So became the lead level designer on that team, and here we are today.
thank you both for your work on that game there. I think it did pretty well.
A couple people played it. It's fine.
A few people played it, yeah. And question, start with you, Jeff. Your career specifically, what brought you to Respawn?
Well, I mean, it was really connections with Stig Asmussen, who was the game director on God of War 3. He was a really fun director to work for. He listens to, everyone on the team. Everyone's got a voice. And so I just wanted to work with him again. And just, so combination of that and also, all the guys coming from Infinity Ward, for those of you that don't know the background of Respawn, it started from a core of people that, made the Call of Duty franchise. And then they moved over and made Titanfall, which I just thought felt great, like as a game. It played really great. So I knew that like the studio, was really credible and had made some amazing games. And so a combination of, my connection with Stig and the opportunity to kind of build something from the ground up, as well as kind of the reputation of the other team at the studio, which made it kind of a no-brainer to jump over and get a fresh start.
And Blair, same question to you. What brought you to Respawn?
Star Wars. Star Wars single player games, the pedigree of the studio. I think that's what Jeff said is they were, I think in studio culture and game dev culture, they were quite known as a very talented group, but didn't have that breakout game. They do now with Apex, obviously, and I guess our game as well, for the studio. But if you knew game dev, you knew that there was this incredibly talented group of old school guys building some fun stuff. So the opportunity to work with them under the leadership of like Vince is, that doesn't happen that often. So that coupled with working on Star Wars, which was always been my favorite IP, my favorite franchise, some of the best stories, some of the best, memories of movies come from Star Wars for me. And then also when I joined, I was only like the fourth production person. So the idea of, and everybody had only been there for, I think 6 months in production at that point. So it was building a new team for me in my discipline, which was really fun, and a much smaller team than I'm used to. The games at BioWare were up to 350 developers, and this, when I joined, I was employee 80, which was a nice change for me.
Yeah, we it was a really cool opportunity to kind of build the team from the ground up, because it's a completely separate team from the Titanfall and Apex team. We started, we specialize in single player, third person action adventure, and kind of built a team designed to make that type of game from the ground up. There are a couple of people that transferred over from the Titanfall Apex team onto our team, but for the most part, we had to build a team from scratch and attract talent from across the industry. And actually, when I started, like, Star Wars wasn't the draw because it wasn't Star Wars. It was just, actually, when I started, Stig had about 8 pitches or so for different potential games, and that's all I knew. And once I came on board, we kind of built one of those out to, a pretty decent level where we kind of proved some of the gameplay, which still wasn't a Star Wars game. But then, while pitching that to different publishers, we kind of proved that we could make a third-person action adventure game, especially Melee. And so from then on, that's what got us the Star Wars license. EA came in and said, hey, I bet you guys could make a Star Wars game. And so then we got to jump on and kind of change gears, start from scratch, but kind of with the same sort of bones that our previous game had, and can build the game around a lightsaber with force powers.
Definitely an exciting game to make.
It's kind of like the dream tool set, right? Lightsaber, force powers, like everyone wants to play that. So
absolutely. What's it been like working with Lucasfilm?
They're great partners because they have such a breadth of knowledge with the IP. We'll come up with a cool idea for like a creature or a mechanic, something to jump on or whatever, or a level look. And they'll just help us make it fit into the Star Wars universe. They're never giving like full hard nose and big stops and like, you can't ever do this kind of stuff, unless it's like being used for something else that they don't tell us about. Like, no, you should like maybe use this guy instead. But they help ground us into the Star Wars universe. They have that expertise. So working with them really helps us. I like personally working within constraints or like a box, and working within Star Wars enables you to do that. So it's like we can go this far, but pull a little bit back. And there's a lot of back and forth, which ends up also helping you get to something really cool, because feedback is always, it's always a good thing to have feedback. So hearing from them and discussing with them, like, oh, don't use this guy, we use this guy instead. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's actually a cooler thing. Can we bring that into our game now? And also the idea of we're making like an authentic Star Wars experience just kind of adds a bit of oomph when you're working through it. Like a little like, oh, this is important if you're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't always like it was a relationship we had to develop too. So early on, I think we kind of had to feel each other out a little bit and kind of gain each other's trust. So there were, certainly bumps in the road because, they're very protective of their IP. Obviously, they've got the biggest IP in the world, and that's their job to be protective of it. But and our job is to make, as fun of a game as we can, in that Star Wars universe and building an authentic Star Wars story. But also it needs to be a fun game. So we kind of had to like earn each other's trust there, kind of in our two different realms. And yeah, now the relationship is really good, like what you're saying.
A lot of people wonder, like, oh, so what is it, like an email you send them and they send you one back or something? And it's like, no, it's a meeting every single day for a different group. So there's maybe the story group on Wednesday and the art guys are on Friday, and it's just constant communication with them. Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's definitely like a big part of the production and leadership job to kind of keep that out of the team as well. So most of the team is moving forward, building the fun stuff, and we can kind of massage the relationship and work within the constraints and kind of message, like try to get our team's ideas like up to Lucas and approved and work them out.
That's great. Now, obviously, Star Wars has had an impact on everyone on this call, and I'm curious what Star Wars has meant to you, both throughout your life and throughout the development of Jedi Fallen Order.
Oof. I don't know.
It's always tough.
That's a tough one. Star Wars is just something from my childhood that I could share with my parents because it was so generational. It was so long between episodes and stuff like that. So when it finally got to me, I watched it on VHS. It was something my parents were also interested in. And my dad would talk about seeing the first scene in New Hope for the first time, and the little cruiser goes past, and then the Star Destroyer goes past, and nobody had ever seen anything like that before. So it was just mind blowing. Whereas like a lot of stuff that came out when I was a kid was kind of already blowing past my parents as like, they were like, that's weird, that's for kids, that kind of stuff. So Star Wars was just like a great bonding moment. And then growing up with it, it's something you can always reference. It's in the culture so much. Luke, I am your father, probably the most known line, I would think.
Incorrectly quoted line, Larry.
I know, right? Yeah. So it's just been, there was something when we went to the new Star Wars park at Disneyland and walking, not the first time I saw the Millennium Falcon, but when I was in it and walking into the cockpit, there was just a feeling that I hadn't felt very many other times. And so the IP is just, the Star Wars is such a, I don't know, it's so ingrained in the culture that it's just it puts you in a different place, puts you in a different mindset. So it's really fun to work in that universe because it's so limitless. There's hope, there's fun. It's not super hardcore. It's easy to get into. Yeah, that's why I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of at the same time, very fantastical and yet grounded and real feeling. Like all of the, especially like the original trilogy and all the practical effects and things like that, but also kind of the locales, like they feel like them, like they kind of have their singular biomes and it's like, okay, I get this planet, this is a desert planet, but then there's like the quirkiness factor that kind of gets added over the top that like makes it feel alien. It's like, oh yeah, there's kind of this wonder to this world. And on top of that, it's, classic hero's journey, like boy with a lightsaber, like boy with the sword, like good versus evil. Who didn't like play around pretending they had a lightsaber as a kid.
Thanks for sharing. On May 5th, Revenge of the Fifth, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order sold over 10 million copies. Congratulations. And to the rest of the team, which is absolutely extraordinary. Could you tell us the impact, according to the both of you, that Fallen Order has had on gaming and on the Star Wars franchise as a whole?
Ooh, well, that's a tough question too. I don't know.
I don't know if we can answer that.
Yeah. I think BD1 is my answer for Star Wars. Bringing something kind of new but relatable to Star Wars. I think BD1, once kind of we settled on the design of that and knew he was going to be a robot buddy, like Luke and R2, like Rey and BB-8, but he's kind of like brings something unique to kind of that category of character that I find really charming. And I think he's like not the fan favorite, might be the fan favorite, but he's like the team favorite, like mascot. So I love BD1. I think he's kind of the first thing I think of when I think of what did we bring to Star Wars as a whole. I hope he could show up on other properties. That'd be cool.
I've already seen a BD1
on that
type droid on a comic. So yeah, that's what we'll say our gift to Star Wars is he's adorable. For gaming, I don't know. It was just nice to make a purely single player focused game with no multiplayer, no add-ons, no MTXs and stuff like that. So, and no expectations for them. And having studio leadership that stood up for those things and let us just make that game, especially with a team this small. We were really ambitious, I think, for the size of the team and the scope of the game we made. So it's just exciting that we were able to make it. Anytime a game ships, it's like, wow, that's crazy. So
first game in a new franchise, even though it's Star Wars, it's obviously an established franchise, but it's a new gaming franchise. We've seen Jedi before, but it was in different types of games. You had Force Unleashed and the Jedi Knight games, but this is kind of our take on it. And we haven't seen a lightsaber wielding Jedi with Force powers, that has a single player experience built around him for a while. So I think just exciting to bring that back to players and try to make like a player gameplay focused experience.
I think that for on the Star Wars angle is the one thing I think we actually did nail was the feeling of you are a Jedi. At least when you get to near the end of the game, when Cal's growing in his power and you start to feel the power fantasy of having leveled up Force push and multiple sabers and things like this. I think we really nailed the idea of what Luke is or Rey is, where it's like you are a Jedi going through these crazy things, reflecting blasters, which I don't think was really represented that well before. So I think that was our one big thing we got right. I think much like the Spider-Man PS4, you got the feeling of wow, I'm Spider-Man when you jump out the window and start web swinging. So yeah,
excellent. And the big news was on May 4th, Star Wars Day. The rest of the team released a wonderful surprise update that brought not only combat challenges in the battle grid, new Journey Plus, new cosmetics, which has been a ton of fun. Thank you for releasing the update. Big question is, what's next?
Hey, Jeff, what's next?
What's next? What can we say? I think Andrew Wilson said something today that, when announcing that we hit 10 million unique players. He commented how it's impressive, for the first game in a new franchise. And we're really proud of that game. And I think we'll leave it at that for now.
we have open positions for people to work on our Star Wars team.
Yes.
So.
Fair enough. Thanks for sharing. I want to thank you both so much for your time and thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. No, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's been
It's
awesome.
fun to kick it and chat.
Absolutely. Hope everyone stays safe up there, of course, and may the force be with you.
Thank you. You too.